Hi. Okay. I'd like to talk about my family. If you've actually listened to all of my videos, you've heard me talk about Mormons this and Mormons that, and that my family, they're narcissists and the way they treat me, and I can't hang out with them anymore and stuff like that. And it's like one of the Ten Commandments is honor thy mother and father and things. It's just one of the harsh realities of being me. It's not all because I transitioned female. It's not all because I'm a trans woman that happened. You know, it's more because I learned to love myself and I grew spiritually because I transitioned. I grew a lot when I found Rastafari. I grew a ton. And then, just like everything that's happened to me up to this point has been part of my learning to get me where I am now, including transitioning female. And that just kind of put the finishing touches on learning how to love myself. And so I love myself more than ever before, and I'm happier than ever before. But in the process of learning how to love myself, I have a 20-year-old son who I've never not loved. I was a good, loving parent. I went to all his parent-teacher conferences. I paid for everything. I raised the boy myself. I was a single parent. And when I was married for the first 7 years of his life, I was the stay-at-home parent. It's the one thing I put the most time and energy in my life is raising my son. And I love him with all my heart, and I always have. But raising my son and learning how to love a child of your own and learning how to love myself has taught me things about love. It's taught me things about how another person should love me too, including my parents. So like when I first came out as a trans woman, my mom told my son that the devil it's the Satan's tricked me and brainwashed me into thinking this, and then then I told them and they called me a liar. They said, that's not true. None of anytime I say anything that makes me sound like any of this is always, I believe I was born transgender. I believe that everybody that's transgender is born transgender, and it's just a tendency. And as soon as you start, with epigenetics and things like that, as soon as you start doing it, then it starts becoming more and more real. If you're like born with that tendency to be transgender and you never do anything with it, and you have the right kind of love and everything, and you become someone, I believe that a person could become someone else, and then that ends up becoming such a small part of you that it doesn't really matter that much, but it's probably still there, But since I've done this, it's something that's always been there has become something that's even bigger, So in that sense, I was born transgender. And so when I look back through my life and I'm trying to make sense of it, which is my right, I have a right to know myself. It's the main reason we're born here, to know thyself and to learn how to love thyself so you can know everything, other things outside of you, and learn how to know and love other people. The true definition of love is to know. When you know someone, you love someone. And if you don't know someone, you can't love them. Loving is knowing. It's knowing someone, So, so like my mom was my first hero. I was like her student as a kid. I was her pupil, I wouldn't even socialize with kids when I was really young. I would just follow my mom around, and she was like, would put her makeup on or like do her nails. Like, how like when women do their nails, that smell that it makes, that's like that brings back memories. That takes me all the way back. I have a whole lifetime full of memories. My dad and my other siblings would just, as soon as my mom would do her nails, they'd get the hell out of there. It stinks. I'm out of here. But me, I was the only one that would sit there and keep talking with her. And same thing when she would do sewing or makeup, or cooking, I just was always really interested in my mom. And she'd watch Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie or I Love Lucy, all three of those shows. I have all of those things. they're a part of me because I go back so far with them. She would like do beauty. She was like ran a beauty pageant for a while, and just like all those things, I cared about them. When she became an aerobics instructor in the 80s, that's when I started getting into fitness and nutrition. And then my sister got a blood disease where my mom had to learn about herbal medications. And I started learning anything my mom learned, I would start learning too. And most of the time, I'd end up learning more than her about it. I probably know more about herbal medications than her at this point. I probably know more about fitness than my mom at this point. But she started me on both of those paths. And a lot of things about me are that way. I owe everything to my mom. She's my original teacher, my original hero. And my dad in a lot of ways too. My dad didn't talk to me very much. He still doesn't. He's always found me annoying. I've always been a silly child to him. My dad's he's serious, but he has a funny side too. He's always been funny to me, they both love me. My mom and dad both love me. But I've learned, like, when I first was transgender, my mom said, look, we're not kicking you out of the family, but you have to have use your boy name and wear boy clothes. You can't do that around here because it's satanic. It's the devil, She didn't say that it's the devil, but that's what she told my son. And I just know her because the advantage the transgender person has is that we interview you before we come out of the closet. I think all LGBT people probably have that in common. Before you're coming out of the closet, you talk to all your friends and family, and you already know where they are before it happens, And I'd already I told my family many, many, many years before that I was bisexual. I used to be bisexual. And they just thought, oh, you just want attention. And they did the same thing with this. I'm transgender. I'm going to live the rest of my life a female. Oh, you just want attention. You're a liar. It's not, or they just would, And with learning to love myself, I realized that I would never treat my son that way, Even if my son did something I disagree with, I wouldn't, I would still support him. Even if my son murdered someone, I'd be, I wouldn't be against the police throwing him in prison, but I would want him to treat him the way you're supposed to treat prisoners. And if they treated him wrong, I'd be mad and I'd protest it. You know what I mean? And I would go visit my son and make sure he felt loved. And you know what I mean? I wouldn't just, it's just like, that's an extreme situation, but it's the concept of conditional versus unconditional love, and so they kicked me out of the family like that. So I changed my last name. Their last name is Morrison, and my last name used to be Morrison. When I went to the judge and changed my name and gender, so I'm legally a female. I didn't just change my first name and my middle name, but I changed my last name too. My last name Ducharme. So when I did that, at first I thought I was going to just make up a last name out of thin hair, but I ended up deciding, why not just pick one of my other options of last names, And Ducharme is the maiden name on my dad's grandma's side, It's her mom's maiden name, so my grandma's maiden name. So in other words, I'm just every bit as much a Ducharme as I am a Morrison. See, so I'm kind of tricking the system. I really am a Ducharme, but it's not the last name I had growing up. And I told my family, fine, that's not reasonable to me. You have to support me enough to call me by female pronouns and all that stuff. So I gave myself a different last name, and I told them this so that they can pretend they don't know me. They can pretend they're not even related to me if they want, And also just for myself, so I can build a new life for myself, And so like my sister, for example, I kind of compare with my sisters. I'm kind of like Cinderella, like my sisters do something, it's all, that's so fantastic that you would do that and start your own business. Everything they do is fantastic, but nothing I do everything's a joke. It's not just this. Like everything I've always ever done or wanted to do, unless it's been completely approved by the Mormon Church. Like I'm an Eagle Scout and I went on a Mormon mission. And they still, boy, I sure think that's great that you speak Spanish because you went on a Mormon mission, and how's that Eagle Scout? And I'm like, oh my hell, that's when I got my Eagle Scout when I was 14. I'm 49. I've like quadrupled my age, and you still think that's the only thing I've done with myself. That's so mean. I've done a whole bunch of things with myself. And that's abusive to treat me that way. Quit, shut up about the Eagle Scout thing and the mission. That was like I've more than doubled my age since I was a missionary too. It's implying that I haven't done anything else since then. And other things they say, it's obvious that's what they actually think. And it's because they don't really care about me. They care about me doing things that makes them look good in their social world, which is a Mormon social world. And so after a while I realized, and like my sister, I saw it's been like 5 years since I've spoken with my sister, and her son's going to get married. So I say, yes, I'll be anxious to go to your wedding, in on Facebook in the comments. And then my sister, since she's also friends with her son on Facebook, posted a comment and said, and hopefully if you go there, you won't go around calling people toxic. And you'll finally learn how to make people like you. You'll finally realize that's why nobody likes you, because you call them toxic. She doesn't know that meanwhile I've studied narcissism and stuff. They always flip everything around, make everything on, so like it's my fault. They still think that they haven't done anything wrong and that everything's my fault. They still think they need to fix me. I would never treat my son that way. If we had some falling out of some kind and it's been 5 years, I wouldn't go straight into lecturing and trying to prove my innocence to him. I would be, especially, they're a group of people. They group together and eat Thanksgiving dinner together. Meanwhile, I'm alone in some distant apartment somewhere all by myself saying, I don't have a family. You know what I mean? And there's no empathy. That doesn't prick them in the heart, doesn't make them feel anything. They're just hoping that I learned my lesson, and I didn't even do anything wrong. See what I mean? So, like, things can change, but it would have to be on their part. As I study therapists talking about narcissists, and I could go on and on and on. Like, every time I interact with them, they don't just do things that narcissists do. They do like textbook things narcissists would do, like all the way, And so before, where I was stupid enough to fall for that, now I don't. And I also know that I benefit by not being around them. If I were to put myself in their presence, they say things like, you're a good-looking, you make a really good-looking man. I mean, you make an ugly-looking woman, but, I love you and care about you, and I just want you to know you really make a beautiful man. You should just, like they say comments like that. That's the lack of empathy. Now I have to go live my life with this voice in my head of one of my family members telling me that I'm ugly, So like that lack of empathy makes them dangerous. I can't hang out with them because there's that's not going to be good. I'm just going to have a bunch of things that I'm going to have to try to work through, and some of them I may never recover from, It's hard. Like narcissistic abuse syndrome it's very real, and it's a very real part of my life. And I deal with constantly feeling like as much as I love myself, as much as I don't expect myself to be perfect, it's still hard for me to admit that I'm capable of being loved because I'm alone all the time. And then I find myself saying, Angie, you're just meant to be alone. And I like being alone, but it still hurts my feelings that other people get to have a boyfriend they get to snuggle up with. I want a boyfriend that I can snuggle up with too, And the thing I want something, that's, like it's hard when you're human. It's hard to escape that. You can enjoy being alone, but you still want something sweet and soft in your life. My son is beautiful, by the way. So my son's a huge exception. My son, it took him about 5 minutes when I told him I'm going to live the rest of my life female. It was a hard thing for him at first, but it took him about 5 minutes because my son knows I love him. My son has to love me because I'm the person that raised him, and my son knows how much I love him and how important he is to me. And even though my family never hugged me once my whole life, until my dad went to a therapist, and the therapist said, "You guys never hug each other?" And then he started hugging, but they still avoid hugging me, and they never say anything positive that, I really like that song. I write songs. I have, if you look at my playlist, The Seashores, you know what? Nobody's ever liked any of my music before. My ex likes a couple of my songs, but my songs kick ass, like I have to, it's hard to sound good when you feel like you live in a world where everybody thinks that you suck, but I know that my music's good, and I know that I have talents, and I know that I have a value, and I know that I deserve to be loved, but it's still a constant struggle to convince myself of that all the time. I fall into these ruts where I don't think that I can have those things, and so I can't afford to be around them, because every time I start to forgive them, because I'm a Christian and I believe people can change, within the 3 minutes of being around them, I can already tell, nope. And therapists say if you cut yourself off from them, you go back a year later, and if they still haven't changed, then you're just going to have to admit they're not going to change, Like my family's not going to learn how to have empathy for me. They're always going to think everything's my fault. And no matter how much it makes me suffer, and no matter how alone I am, they're just always going to defend their side of the argument that everything's my fault, and how's it my fault, That's not true. I'm not doing this. My mom thinks that I'm doing this to punish her, to punish her in some way and things like that. That's what narcissists do. They flip it around and they gaslight you and stuff. It's really obvious, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. So just know I love my mom. I love my dad. I'm thankful for them, and they're my heroes, and I owe them a lot. Like, I learned so much from my mom. I learned so much from my dad, but I don't believe that they love me in a really unconditional way that you know what I mean? It's just a harsh reality I have to deal with. So I want you guys to forgive me, please, for making an example of them. I don't want to live the rest of my life hidden in a cave where I don't dare to be myself because I'm worried I'm going to hurt them, which is what they want me to do. Because it's a big, it's a big enough part of me, and it's a big enough part of my story. They shouldn't have hurt me that much in the first place. Then it wouldn't be part of my story, and I could hide it if it was a smaller thing, So it's just like, I just don't, or maybe it's because I just don't know how to do it any other way. I'm not really sure, but I want you guys to forgive me, okay? Check out this guitar. Look at that. Man, that's my guitar. Yeah. I love my guitar, Nobody loves my guitar. Nobody loves my music. I spend all my time alone, and meanwhile I'm freaking awesome.